Hey, this is Ed Robertson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative and creative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet these people through my work in ranch brokerage and land conservation, or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, pretty much anyone who's doing important work and has an interesting story to tell. My guest today is A.D. Maddox. A.D. is an accomplished artist who creates some of the most spectacular and memorable paintings of trout that I've ever seen. Using bright colors and unique perspectives, A.D. depicts trout and the fly fishing lifestyle in a way that's completely original, yet so authentic you'd be hard-pressed to find an angler who doesn't love her work. Her art has been featured widely throughout the fishing world, including on the cover of Gray's Sporting Journal, on Patagonia Apparel, and even on the side of Stealthcraft drift boats. I first encountered A.D.'s work when I moved to Jackson Hole in the mid-2000s. I'm not an art connoisseur, but I was instantly taken away with how she managed to capture the beauty and realistic details of trout with a contemporary and unconventional style. And just like her work, A.D. is a one-of-a-kind original. She spent years as a super competitive athlete, studied exercise physiology in college, taught herself to paint without any formal art education, and rips around back roads on a Ducati motorcycle. Despite a fun-loving and easygoing exterior, she approaches her work with a discipline and rigor that seem more fitting for a professional soldier than a professional artist. Thanks to A.D.'s outgoing and hilarious personality, we had a very fun and wide-ranging conversation. We discussed her upbringing and her parents' role in giving her the confidence to pursue art as a full-time career, and we also chatted about her many years living in Jackson Hole and how the people, landscapes, and natural beauty of that valley influenced her art. She talks in detail about the importance of facing challenges, both in work and life, head-on and proactively, with a positive attitude and relentless work ethic. Whether you're an artist or not, or an angler or not, there are many wise lessons in this conversation that anyone could apply to their work and life. Thanks to A.D. for taking the time to chat. Hope you enjoy. To try to keep this in line with some of the other interviews I've done for about 5 seconds, and then I imagine it's going to be different than any interview I've ever done.
Probably.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm counting on it. But when you meet somebody, like when you go to the fly fishing show tonight and you meet somebody for the first time and they say, "What do you do?" How do you answer that?
What do I do? I say I am an artist. What do you paint? Fly fishing. What's that? Google it, man.
So if you had to describe your art to somebody, they didn't know anything about it, how would you describe it?
I say Google it, man. No, I would say that I'm definitely not traditional. I've definitely got my own style. I never studied art. So to really give you like technical terms, I don't know, I'd say it's a bit contemporary with a little, you know how the cooks do it, the little dash of this and a little pinch of that. And somewhere in between, you get something that looks like, here, look, put A.D. Maddox into Google and see those. I do that. I say, now click on images, and that's what it is.
It really is 100% unique. I've never seen anything like it. Like I told you when we talked last week, you know, when I moved out west, I saw some of your work. I moved to Jackson Hole where you were, and I saw some of your work, and it just instantly sticks in your mind as completely unique. But at the same time, it's completely familiar because it's such a it's an accurate portrayal of these beautiful fish. And so I don't understand how you do that, how you mix the contemporary bright colors, really artistic side of things, but it's also completely realistic at the same time. How did you even focus in on fly fishing to begin with?
Well, the gallery. Well, I've always painted subject matter that in whatever area I lived in that would sell, because the goal was to make a living. Obviously, I had bills that I had to pay, so I was intelligent enough to say, wow, I should paint what people might want in this area. And I just, I was painting like buffalo, elk, moose, deer, cowboys, Indians, in the area of Jackson Hole. And the gallery owner, Beth Overcast, and the story has been told, frequently through the magazines, occasionally here and there, but she just kind of mentioned to me, she said, you should paint trout. And I remember my dad used to fish for him. And I don't think I'd even caught a trout. And so I was like, trout. I was like, God, and I lived with a bunch of fly fishermen at the time. And so I started painting trout on furniture because they wouldn't hang my canvases because they had all the big artists on the walls. So I started on furniture. And the first piece sold like in 20 minutes for $1,000, which is, I actually really think that's something that doesn't happen quite that often. It was really a really lucky shot.
What was it? Was it a chair or a coffee table, or what was the actual piece?
No, it was like a credenza.
Okay.
Like a sin cabinet that would go at the back of say a sofa, or it was beautiful. But that sold to the Best family in Jackson Hole, and it was a pretty big gallery on the square in Jackson Hole at the time, so it kind of made me look really good. Beth Overcash just said, get painting. I said, okay. So I kept painting the trout, and of course I kept painting the other stuff too, but the trout always sold. So, my dad taught me how to fish, and, I knew that I had to start getting out fishing to take a look at what these things really look like so I could paint them. So a lot of my fishing just happened because I had to investigate further.
Sure.
And start photographing. I mean, this is back in the days when we were in print film, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So is that what you would do? Would you catch these fish and photograph them and then take those back, or kind of go off of your memories, or was it a combo of all the above?
No, it wasn't. Early on in the beginning, I was really painting by the photographs. So I was real meticulous about how I shot these things because I wanted the anatomy to be perfect. And then as I've gone along here in the years now, I'll nail the anatomy of the fish, but then the photo goes down because I just can't do it anymore. It's too slow. I've been doing them for so long. I like the freedom of being able to paint just the fun of just painting and not looking at a photo. Once I get the layout, this piece is mine, and I have to make it all mine. So that's what I do. I really love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been doing it for so consistently for so long. I mean, it's clear that you must love it to put in the amount of effort you have. I mean, cause it's pretty unbelievable how focused it seems you've been on this. And it's amazing how your work continues to evolve. If you had to look back 10 years ago or 15 years ago and compare your work then to your work now, what would you say is the biggest change that you would see or that you would notice that maybe somebody like me would not notice?
Well, it's technical. Like when I look back, in fact, right now I'm painting a piece that was painted in 2003 that didn't sell, which is really rare because all my work sells. And I was looking at this piece going, God, man, it's hanging on my wall forever. And I just said, ooh, there's composition mistakes, minor, because I'm usually pretty good with composition, but this one had some stuff in it that I didn't like. I took out and I repainted it. I just finished it yesterday, and I'm top coating it right now as I'm talking to you. I'm painting.
Are you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't even chew gum and talk to anybody.
Yeah, this is just a top coat, but it's pieces can be pushed a lot further. When I look at my old work, I have so much respect for it because it's the map of how I've gotten where I am today. And but there's further, like I see into a piece, even from 2014, I can look at a piece and go, wow, I could have gone further. And this is how I know when there's a stopping point, when I really look at a piece and I see that I cannot add to it anymore. And then I stop and I sign it. That's how I end the piece. Like, I look at it and I go, there's nothing else that I see that I want to do. I'm going to sign it and it's done.
How do you know that?
And I don't
have there been times where you've gone too far, where you've kept painting and then you say, oh man, I think I crossed the threshold there. I should have stopped that, yesterday.
Sure. But that doesn't really happen that often anymore. Mm-hmm. Really what I'd say when I look at my old work is that it wasn't painted as far as it could possibly go. So I would say, maybe my earlier work in high school, I've overpainted a few pieces, but overpainting is not really one of my problems because I know that less is more. And, and so that's really what I'd say when I look at the early stuff. But, for the people, out there listening, I tell anybody that comes across any of my earlier work, buy it. If you can get your hands on it, take it. Because the thing is about an artist is that if you have an artist that's sitting here doing it the rest of their life, the stuff is the value builds because, I never put my artwork on sale. And, I always increase prices. They're only going up.
Yep.
It was so funny. I had a friend of mine from Jackson Hole text me a picture of this trout. It wasn't a trout skin. It was an abstract from like 2005. It had a hole in it. And I was like, oh my God. It was selling. They had it at some type of secondhand store. And I said, are you kidding me? She's like, yeah, but it's got a hole in it. And I was like, God, I don't know. I would grab it.
Yeah.
So,
so when
there's a few. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're talking a lot about composition and all the terms that you hear with art, but I know that were never formally trained. So how did you figure all that out? I mean, it sounds, I know you've been doing art your whole life and you grew up in an artistic household, but how did you figure out some of this technical stuff? Just trial and error, just, throwing it against the wall, see what sticks?
Yep, that's exactly what I did. I developed and built my own style, all from just pushing myself to see, how something would work, playing around with the paint. I never wanted to be taught, and it's still to this day, it's a bit distasteful to me because, then you're painting how somebody else has taught you how to do, but then there's certain techniques that you can learn how to do if you need help with that. But I think just for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, I'd rather have the game of trying to figure it out myself and making it all mine.
Sure.
And because I don't want anybody else to tell me how to do something when it comes to painting, because I obviously have a natural knack at it. And I've had a couple of mentors who have showed me. There's been about 3 of them, and
who are they?
2 of them are. One is a man named Kami, who's a really big international artist. He lives in Atlanta, and he taught me about color. And this is early, like when I was 23. I painted for him. Way back in the day. Early on, artists used to have apprentices that worked for them, and Kami really taught me quite a bit about color. And then another one was Greg McCurron, who passed of cancer, and he has a beautiful soul and a very, very well-known artist, plein air artist, and he taught me a lot about color and my palette and adding some warmer hues. And I just absolutely loved hanging out with this man. He was really a dear friend of mine. And we just talked about art. We used to get together and talk about art, and I'd buy him a beer, and he was just so wonderful. And then, you know, John Banovich, who's an extremely famous artist, a friend of the family. And John's helped me a couple of times, you know, quite a bit, but not too much because, you know, I don't think John teaches people. He's so busy with, you know, his family and his career, but he's helped me out with a couple of technical points when I got myself in a little bit of trouble. I called him. And Greg did too. When I got stuck in a point with a painting that I reached out to ask them, but, you know, other than that, I've pretty much had to figure out stuff on my own, by trial and error. And, you know, there's nothing like, you know, when you're working with oil, to have a good set of rubber gloves and some rags, because I've painted all day on a piece that I end up grabbing the rubber gloves and doing rub outs. You know, I never let bad oil dry on a piece. If I work on it and I look at it and it's going, you know, this really stinks, I just get on the rubber gloves and rub out all this stuff and then start the next day to make it go right. Now, that's a painting disaster, but sometimes, occasionally, if you're trying to build out of your, you know, when I'm trying to do something out of my imagination and, you know, a piece goes into a bad direction, you gotta, you know, not be the effect of that and just kind of, you know, causatively rub it out, man.
Sure.
Erase it.
Well, it's funny hearing you say all that, you know, because one of the common themes of all the people I've interviewed on this podcast, I've had a few artists, and then I've had some, you know, really hardcore endurance athletes and architects and just people that are doing really interesting work and unique work. And I think one of the common themes is that they all did not wait around for permission or wait around for somebody to tell them how to do something. They just dived in and started figuring it out on their own. And I think that seems to be a key to success when you're trying to do something new that nobody's ever done before, because the reality is, you know, you can read a million books and ask people, but at best you'll be repeating what somebody else has already done. And so I don't see that there's any other way around it than just to dive in and make mistakes and figure it out. I mean, do you agree with that?
Oh God, absolutely. Dive in, start, you know, it's application. You can read all you want in life and write down all your goals, but if you're not doing it, it's not getting done. And the other thing is to know that, I mean, along this journey, hell yeah, there's been mistakes, but the key is that when you make, I mean, you know, example is got this one piece, I swear, 3 days in a row on a 4 by 5 foot canvas, I had rub outs, 75% of the piece. 3 days in a row, rub outs. That's never happened in my life. And I got to a point with this piece where, I mean, you'd think I was crazy sitting down there talking to it. Like, give me a break, you little shithead. And I was pissed. And I kept trying, you know, 2 days of water, 1 day of rocks, and then I finally went on rocks again and got it. And it was one of the first pieces I sold of this series that went out in 2014, and I sold it for a lot of money, and it paid off all that hard work. But it's just, you know, God, I'm ornery as hell. So if I'm working on a piece, you know, it will be good. And I know that even looking at a white canvas before I start, I already know the piece is going to be good. So when I have certainty on knowing it's going to be great, then the fun of it is making all the right decisions to get it where it's going to be great, because you already know it.
And probably another level to that is when you get in a hole or you start getting frustrated. You've done it enough and you know it's going to be great that you know this kind of frustration, this little battle you're going to have to go through, you know you're going to come out on the right side of it. So while it is frustrating and might drive you crazy for a little while, you know if you put in the work, it's going to pay off.
They always do. They always do. But that's, you know, mentally, I mean, that's the way that I think. Like, all of these, I mean, and not every piece is like this. Some pieces just paint themselves. And I'm like, oh my God, that was so easy. Some of them go really smoothly, but then if you really look at my body of work, they're all very different. I don't like doing all the same paintings. Now the trout skins are different because they're very familiar. That's one painting I can tell you that, you know, I've done a lot of trout skins, and they're the tech for doing a trout skin's all down. I don't have to reinvent everything, but all the rest of my pieces are a lot of inventing of a new way to do a trout, which I always do, find a new way to do a trout. We've seen it time and time again. So I have to reinvent, you know, whereas other artists can do, you know, there's a cowboy and there's a cowboy and there's a cowboy. And some artists do run like that. I mean, yeah, they can do them different styles or, you know, if all I did was paint trout skins, I mean, I think I'd be pretty bored by now.
Well, I think that's really cool that, you know, that you're down there struggling and going, you know, going through these struggles. Yet when you could very easily, you could paint those trout skins all day and cruise through and sell them and make some good money. But the fact that you've made it as an artist, as far as being able to have it as your full-time job, yet you still want to push it as hard as you can. I think that's awesome. And I think that mindset is why you've been able to do so well as a professional artist. Not that I'm an expert on it or anything, but it seems that you love the process as much as you love the end result. Is that accurate?
Well, the process, you just said it, the process is what you got to love. That, the building of a canvas is, you know, each step, like my most favorite is the second coat. The first coat's just, the first coat, it doesn't matter what size the canvas is. I can cover that canvas within 30 minutes, it's covered. Because the first coat's got all the canvas, is going to show through, and it doesn't really matter me what color is going down. I could care less.
Yeah.
Because the second coat's going to start really grooving it in, and in the linen just changes as the second coat's put on, and then it gets a lot more like, oh boy, you know, watch out, because we're looking at rub outs if it's going to be messy, because I don't want to build this massive foundation of oil. I don't want to, you know, clump up this canvas. So I start watching it on third and fourth coats is when I really start dialing it in. But some of the whimsical, crazy stuff I do on the first and second coats is really fun. But I'm dialing this in as I go along, Ed. I mean, it is, you know, it's all I can tell you. It's one hell of an adventure, and I'm addicted to it. I just love it.
Yeah, well, it shows. Really do. I mean, it shows in your work, and it shows, you know, when you talk about it. I think it's very clear that you love it, and you love all aspects of it, from the cool parts to the hard parts. I mean, I think that's what a real artist does. You know, we were talking about how I read a bunch of books about artists and the artistic, kind of the artistic process, because I think it's so interesting. It's just, I couldn't imagine, you know, like going down in your studio like you do every day and having to be that creative on a daily basis, creative on demand. You know, what do you think about the idea of writer's block or artist block? This idea like you can't do anything. Do you believe in that, or do you think that's just an excuse and you just got to get down there and get the work done no matter what?
Oh, well, easy. I think it's a lack of confront.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I said it right there, because anything a person can confront, they can handle, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can confront it. I mean, even if I'm looking at a disaster on a piece, which, you know, it does, you know, I don't want to make it sound like I have disasters all the time, because I don't, but if I'm in a really rough part of a painting, I could say, oh God, you know, I can't confront this today. I've got painter's block. This painting's going to go into the corner on timeout. Or I can sit there and say, all right, let's look at it. What's the data here? Give me the data, scratch the emotion. I know you're pissed off. Got it. But look at the data. and then you start, you have your debug. You got to debug a piece where, what's off here. And as the years go by of doing this, I can easily see, having made all these mistakes through the years, I know what to avoid and what not to do. So the errors become smaller.
Mm-hmm.
The errors become smaller. They're not so big anymore. And even in the early days, some of the big errors, I think there was one painting that was a total destructive piece. I mean, I was in the middle of destroying it when I came upon a beautiful painting. I had to stop while I was in the middle of destroying it, and it landed on the cover of Gray's Sporting Journal.
Wow.
So, yeah, so before I knew it, I was covering up the whole piece with gray, and then I was looking at a masterpiece, and I signed it immediately, and it was done accidentally. So sometimes a lot of, it's just one squirrely thing that I think constant alertness of what you're painting, know when to stop and what to take out, what to add, is the game of good painting.
Sure.
For me, and all this is for me, because each artist has their own tech, but yeah.
So you grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and as a kid, did you always think you wanted to be a professional artist?
No.
What did you?
This is the funniest story. I mean, I'll make it real short, but I have been in art from the day that I could pick up, a pen or a pencil. I have been extremely artistic my whole life, and even painting paintings when I was studying sports medicine in college. And even in Jackson Hole in my late 20s, I was working in physical therapy.
Oh, were you really?
And underneath my, I was
were you pretty athletic as a kid?
Trainer, huge athlete, massive athlete.
What kind of sports?
Gymnastics. I dominated gymnastics in Arkansas when I was young, like 9, 10, 11, 12. I think I did gymnastics up until I was 28. And,
did you really?
And I was also a tennis player, and then I did a couple of triathlons, and just obsessed with exercise for a while, and then finally just stopped. Rock climbing. I did rock climbing, and that was pretty much. I kind of got into everything. Skiing. I did a little kayaking, and just really athletic, but underneath my nose was this art. And I really got the idea in my early 20s. 23 was when the decision was made that I wanted to be an artist. I thought it was the coolest occupation ever. And I tried to see ways that I could do it. And I had a huge ego with it, I don't think the ego's never been my problem with art.
You just knew you had the talent. You knew if you put your mind to it, you could do it.
Yeah, I knew I was good.
Were you like that in sports
early?
Too?
Yeah, I don't think self-confidence is ever an area that I've lacked in.
Where do you think that comes from? Because when we were talking last week, you were talking about your brother, who seems to have had a lot of success in business. Is that something your parents, you credit your parents with, or something you were just born with, or a combo of both?
Well, I think it's a lot of being, it's a lot of, I grew up in a family that didn't invalidate me.
Mm-hmm.
I never got invalidated with my artwork. And if you think about it, if you have a kid who anybody around him tells them that their artwork sucks, or that somebody's critical that's around them all the time, while they're in their developing age, the developing ages, where they're trying to do something. If you have somebody that's critical, that's putting you down all the time, why in the hell would you want to go do that?
Yeah.
You get put down, so you think, God, I must be really bad. Well, I didn't have parents like that. And I had teachers that were very validating of my artwork. I had my parents who absolutely loved everything that I did. And in the early days, my mom and dad would buy my artwork, and my friends would buy it.
Yep.
So I had so much support that I never had invalidation. So if you don't get invalidated, then you think you're pretty hot shit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. You think, well, God, I'm really good. Well, that built, and at an earlier age, I would say I'd be more susceptible to it than now. If somebody came up to me now and told me that my artwork was bad, I would laugh in their face so hard, they'd probably run away. You know, I'd be like thinking, okay, I'm standing in front of a person who's obviously on psych meds or, you know, taking drugs and tripping on acid because they obviously can't, you know, look at reality, you know. But I've gotten to a point where, you know, sure, is there always a critic out there that could probably try to tear me down? Sure. Those type of people exist on this planet. But
that means you made it.
You know,
I think that's a sign that if anybody cares enough to give you a hard time, I think that means you've made it. I mean, that just comes with the territory, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Not that it makes it any easier to listen
success.
to that kind of nonsense, but.
Well, it's signs of success. Whenever you start to get a lot of haters, then keep doing what you're doing, because there's a lot of people out there in the world that aren't doing that well, that would love just to pick and pull you down because their lives suck. And that's a true statement.
It is true.
And really successful people know that. If you don't have, you know, the goal should be to get more haters, because the more haters you get, the better you know you're doing.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So you said
isn't there?
23, you decided to go all in, and you were confident you could make it. Where were you living at that point?
When I was 23, I was in Atlanta, and then I moved to Jackson Hole, and then I was selling a lot of artwork in Jackson Hole on my own.
What drew you to Jackson, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, no, my parents used to take us out there when we were kids, and I always thought it was magical. I was real drawn to that area, something about it. Something about magical. Jackson Hole. Yeah, there's just magic in the air. I don't know. It's just it's a euphoric feeling there. The extremity of the weather and the beauty of the summers and how violent the winters can be. It's just extreme. And I was drawn to it. It was so rugged and wild, and the people so cool, and they're so full of life and adventure and danger.
Yep.
I mean, there are so many sports that are done in Jackson Hole alone, I mean, that are so extreme. One error, you're dead.
Yep.
And it's just, God, these people are so full of life, and they still are. You know, I've got a lot of friends out there still doing the same thing, and I have so much admiration for them, the extreme athletes and the ones that have really pushed the envelope. But I was really drawn to Jackson, so I had to go out there, and I was real outdoorsy early on. But this, you know, how are you going to make it? Which direction are you going to go? Well, that's the game. The game is how do you get known? Who, you know, which way do you go to go up? You know?
Yeah. Do you think being in Jackson and being around all those really passionate people and people that are willing to take risks, no matter, you know, whether it's physical or, you know, go up in the mountains and jump off cliffs with the skis and that kind of thing. Do you think being surrounding yourself with those type of passionate people helped your art in a way that you wouldn't have gotten if you'd stayed in Atlanta, where, you know, for the most part, there are a lot of people that just kind of take the traditional expected path?
Oh, absolutely. I think they were big contributors, because if you look at these type of people I'm talking about, what do? They're creating life. And then they're creating life on a really high level. There's people that suck off other people to live and have them create. And then there's people that actually create themselves, their own pathway.
Yep.
I mean, 'cause each and every person has got goals and dreams. Each person they do innately have these. Whether they want to acknowledge it or not, they exist. So So if you're around a lot of people who are creating life and they're going for their dreams, sure, it fuels you because you're around people. You come up with this brilliant idea, and they're like, "Man, you should do that.
Yeah,
you
go
should
for
do
it.
that. You should go for it. Go for it. Do it." And they're sitting there jumping off cliffs. It's like, "Yeah, you should do it. Go for it." Oh, I've never done that. That's like that's a class 5, class 6 rapid. Class 6 will kill you. Oh yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going off that waterfall. Yeah, do it. Yeah, let's go bungee jumping. Oh, where? Off this bridge in Idaho with a bungee cord you made. Oh yeah. Okay, let's go do it. It's like, whoa. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's a wild stuff, but yeah, those type of people were, and still to this day, I love being around creators of big effects.
Well, that reminds me of something we were chatting about last week, is that it seems like you draw a lot of energy from other creative people, and you're obviously extremely extroverted, and you're just a real people person, yet a lot of your profession equals going in a room by yourself and kind of struggling with yourself to come up with this art. How do you balance that, or is that a struggle for you, or have you figured out how that works?
No, it's not a struggle for me. Self-discipline is the game. I paint. My schedule is what is my base. It's impossible to generate power without holding a schedule. You got to be stable to generate power. So I do that by a schedule.
What does your schedule look like?
Me. It's getting up at 7 in the morning and getting going at 8 o'clock and pushing it till as late as I can, at least to 6. But I'll push it later, 8 o'clock, and then going to bed at a decent hour, 11, making sure I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep and doing it again. So, and I give myself the weekends to relax a bit if I want to, or go play. I don't do anything socially during the week, only on the weekends, unless there's an event. It's also keeping myself in check. I don't drink or do drugs, and eat a healthy diet. The main staples of keeping rudiments in.
Sure.
And just taking care of myself, so that I don't have any problems with my body, because I have to stand at an easel all day. So obviously eating pizza and becoming overweight is not going to help my knees at the easel. So I keep myself in shape so I can stand at the easel. And these are basic rudiments, your basic ABCs of how to operate. It's an operating basis.
Have you always operated like that, or has it been an evolution and you've just figured out over the years that this is what works best? Because I know some artists will work from 9 p.m. until 4 in the morning, or and it seems like yours is more of almost like a traditional work day for people. How did you figure that out?
Absolutely. It's over the years finding out. It's finding out what are the game is finding out what is a successful action, what produces the results that I want. And you find out what is the winning action, and you put those winning actions in every day, because statistically they've yielded some good, great stats. So it's finding out what works. I don't need unpredictability. What we're trying to do, my work is unpredictable as it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be great, but the process of getting there is unpredictable. And so I like to keep as many stable datums as I know, having these stable things put in every day. They're going to help me operate with predictably as much as I can while I'm doing the unpredictable. So that's kind of a twist on words, but that's basically what I'm doing.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. And I think it stands in stark contrast to what a lot of people think about professional artists. I think a lot of people, if you just ask somebody on the street, they would think that artists kind of go with the flow, and they wait to be inspired, or they're drinking and doing drugs, or they're just wild. Whereas, you are as disciplined as as any, disciplined as some neurosurgeon who has to go in every day and do their work. It seems like it's just not what you would expect, or not what the average person would expect from an artist, but I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it is true that it is a common belief, and I've come across this many times of what inspires you. Well, do you really have to be inspired to paint?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. Some artists would say, oh my gosh, absolutely, I have to be inspired before I can get the energy to create. Well, for me, that's not really the case. Come 8 o'clock in the morning, it's get up and go time. So I got to turn on the create like the clock. Boom, you're on. It's showtime. Here we go. That's it.
I read a quote from some writer who said, somebody asked him, does he have to wait for inspiration? He goes, yeah, I do, but luckily it happens every single morning at 9 a.m. when I sit down at my desk and start writing.
That is discipline, and it's also being causative over your create.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit there and be the effect and saying that you've got to thumb through, 10 magazines a day before you feel inspired to get up and go cause something. Or something's got to happen to cause you to go create. Well, that causation for me is the clock, because the only way these cycles are going to get done, I got to do them. And I got to anchor them in with the clock, because, that's the way our planet runs. Our planet runs on a clock.
Mm-hmm.
Time is something that is so, I think time is so funny, because, the years roll on, but yet it's another day revolves around this clock,
Yep.
And your body starts aging, and it gets older, and you're like, time is just, it's just change. That's all it is.
Yeah, I agree. One question I wanted to ask you about, when I came across your work when I lived in Jackson Hole and I Googled you, this awesome video came up of you ripping around Jackson Hole on a Ducati motorcycle. Tell me, do you still ride motorcycles?
I do. I'm looking at my Ducati 999 right now. It's in my studio for the winter, and I love riding motorcycles. I just don't ride as fast as I used to. I've slowed down a little bit because I'm, riding around the city.
Sure.
I used to really do some excessive speeds when I lived out in, Wyoming, and I could ride Idaho and Montana, but I've calmed it down quite a bit. That was a video that was taken in 2007. It'd be 10 years ago. That was a funny video.
I'll put that on the webpage for this podcast so people can watch it.
No, don't.
You don't want me to?
Oh my God.
All right. They'll have to research it.
I was such a little actress in that when I'd act like the crazy bug artist, which was, I think it was pretty funny, but
I think it's cool.
It was definitely out of the box, which is something that I definitely own. I mean, yeah.
How'd you get into riding motorcycles initially? Did you ride them as a kid, or is that something you picked up when you moved out west?
I was on Adderall for a long time in my early years, which is a destructive drug that doctors put people on, for ADD.
Yep.
Which I didn't have, and it's a massively destructive drug that I got hooked on. And when I decided to get off of that drug, my world slowed down so drastically that it was painful. Mm-hmm. You can imagine being on copious amounts of amphetamines to nothing. That the motorcycle was what I used to get my speed.
Oh, wow.
So I basically substituted the motorcycle for Adderall. And and I rode and rode as fast as I could to get my rush. And it was a healthier outlet than destroying myself with psych meds.
Sure.
But I'm one of the rare cases of somebody that was able to get off of such a highly addictive, destructive drug, which is, in a lot of ways, it's pretty sad that, I took those drugs for a period of time, but I'm just glad that I came to a point where I said, this is not working for me. It's very destructive, and went against, what the doctors thought. And I just said, I don't think this is a good way to go. I think the best way to go in life is to confront your problems and take them head on and get healthy.
Sure. How old were you when you got off that, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh God, I was 35.
Were you really? How did that affect your
Yeah.
art? Did it affect your art at all?
God, yeah, it affected my art so much. I went through a really dark period because I was so used to being amped up on speed that it just slowed me down, and then I had to confront my artwork without taking drugs. So that was a massive amount of confront that I had to muster up to move through this really dark area of my life. And, where I'm sitting today with 13 years off of drugs is a beautiful, beautiful spot. That's why, I take a lot of pride in where I am today, because I fought my demons.
Sure.
And it was rough stuff, but I made it through. And, have a beautiful life because of it, and I have my health back.
Yep.
Have my health back.
That's an inspiring story. I mean, and I think it fits right in with a lot of the other things you've said about just, you gotta confront anything, any sort of challenge. You gotta confront it head on, and you like you said, those doctors are saying stay on it, and you said no, and I think that goes back to, when you wanted to do the art your way, and you didn't want to wait for somebody to tell you what to do, because you thought you had an idea of how you wanted it to go. And I think you can see I can see a common thread the whole way through. But I think that ability to really just smash through obstacles or confront them without being or at least pretending like you're not scared enough to confront it. I think that's really admirable.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we'd sum it up with a lot of self-determinism.
Yeah.
That's basically, you determine your course of which way you want to go, and then you've got to just smash through all your barriers. And sometimes, it's a lot of reach and withdrawal, Ed. You can reach and go towards the monster, and then you run away from him, and you come back and you get him, and you run away, and you go back and you swat his knees, and you come back, and then next thing you know, you got his head off.
Yeah.
So I know I painted a funny picture there, but it's just like you go out as much as you can confront at the time, and then you retreat and just keep going. And I find that's a really common story amongst the people that dominate, who do really well in life, or they go after it, man.
Yeah.
You got to tear into life and live it hard.
I agree.
And
they say
that must be, huh?
Go ahead.
I said it must be really fun for you to do all these interviews for people to hear all their stories.
I love it. Well, that's the thing. That's why I do this. It's just because I meet so many interesting people, no matter what, through my work and hobbies. And and I was thinking, they're all just so cool, and they're doing such cool stuff. And so then I've just I started recording them, and then expanded it to people that I don't know, but I feel like I should know, like you. And it's really awesome because there's so many common themes. And I think that theme of not listening to authority and just, working hard and playing offense versus playing defense, it comes up time and time and time again.
Oh, God, I would just love to hear all the stories you've heard. I mean, yeah.
There's some good ones.
Yeah. There's the ones that climb to the top, man. They've taken some diggers, I tell you.
Oh, yeah. There's no way around it. There's no way around it.
Everyone gets knocked out. Life deals so many hard blows, especially as you get older.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the amount of blows one receives can be horrific, and you got to be able to get up from them and power on.
Well, I know we're bumping up on an hour here, and I don't want to take any more of your time. I've just got a few quick questions that I've asked other guests, and it's kind of fun to compare the answers among all these different people. The first one is, are there any books that have been meaningful to you and that you recommend to others? And it could be books about the American West or about fishing, or just books in general that have helped you with your artistic process or just kind of day-to-day life.
There is an incredible book by L. Ron Hubbard called The Problems of Work.
Mm-hmm.
And it is probably one of the, that book definitely made an impact on me as far as work goes. The Problems of Work.
Okay, cool. I'll have a link to that.
It's an interesting read, no doubt.
He sounds like an interesting guy from what I know about him.
Yeah, I think L. Ron Hubbard was, he's an incredible writer, but I think Smithsonian had, he was like nominated or as one of in the top 100 most influential people on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's definitely an incredible writer. I've read several books by L. Ron Hubbard. But the data that's in The Problems of Work is incredible, and really there's a lot of complexities that I had going on early on that got simplified with a lot of data that I got out of that book.
Cool.
But yeah, other than that, not really any art books or anything like that. I just
cool. I'll put a link to that.
Just on the easel.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're doing it. You're not reading about it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm busy doing it.
That's the most important thing. If you had to think back and think of either the craziest or the most powerful experience you've had in the outdoors, does anything come to mind? And I've had people tell stories for like getting chased by a grizzly bear to going on a certain hunting trip with their dad. Is there any crazy story that sticks out in your mind? Seems like you might have crazy stories.
God, I've got a lot of those crazy stories up in Jackson Hole, like taking off on a cloudy winter night up in Yellowstone, going to was it Yellowstone or was it Teton National Park, going to his Huckleberry hotspots. Ended up, God, man, that was a freaky experience where I brought a brand new tent, and I was with my friend Matt Combs, and we were trying to go find these hot spots, and it was, all I could see was light and dark. So, the headlamp, everything went wrong. My headlamp wasn't working. His was. We had a brand new tent. We couldn't find out where to put the tent because we didn't know if the dark was water. The light we knew was snow. Ended up sleeping on snow, and I nearly died of hypothermia. And the tent was a disaster to set up because I didn't know how to set it up, and it was brand new, and he didn't know how to set it up, and his headlamp was going out. And in the morning, we could never find the hot pools, and in the morning they're right there in front of us. It was like, what the hell? It was like, it's one of those disaster stories of hell, I was in my early 20s. You do crazy stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a quote by Yvon Chouinard, the guy who started Patagonia. He says it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. So I mean that's
oh God,
that's a perfect
everything
example.
went wrong. We didn't know what we're going to run into out there. It was a nightmare. I'm nearly freezing to death.
If you had to pick one location in the West that is your favorite, and it could be a town, it could be a specific lake or some ranch or a stretch of river, is there one spot that pops out in your mind that's your favorite place? It's a hard question.
It's really easy for me because it's going to be in Grand Teton National Park.
Mm-hmm.
Like right below the Tetons, there's a beautiful place called String Lake. That area, Virginia Lake is,
yep.
And that to me is I don't know if you could get you can't get any more beautiful than that area. It's comparable to the South Island of New Zealand, but then again, I haven't been all over the planet. I think that Jackson Hole and that whole area is, in my opinion, probably one of the most beautiful areas I've ever seen in my life. That's why I stayed there for so many years.
I agree with you. I don't think I've been all over the West, and it's hard to beat that valley. I mean, it's spectacular. And I know that exact area you're talking about. And, it's hard to get your head around.
No, it's like I'd said before, it's magical. The feel of the air and the aesthetics is high. And then you have that cobalt blue falling from the sky, hitting that, rosemary color rock. And it's just, that's what makes them so purple looking, the blue and the red.
Oh, yeah.
And you get the purple mixture of the Tetons, and it's comparable to the South Island around Queensland where the Remarkables are. And it's just New Zealand, that's the other place that I would just say, whoa.
I've never been there, but it's on my list. It just sounds unbelievable.
It's jaw-dropping, but there's other places around the planet because, God, there's everywhere in the world that I haven't been, but a few places I have. I'm just hoping that I'm, going to be able to somehow live next life somehow so I can go check out a lot of other places.
I'm with you on that.
Nobody ever talks about that, but yeah, so, I still want to get down to Argentina. I'm going to be going to the Keys in May, it looks like. I just confirmed a trip right before you called, and there's a lot of places, but right now I'm just trying so hard to get a lot of these originals done. We'll see where I get.
I bet you'll make progress. It seems like you get stuff done.
What about you? Where's your favorite place that you've ever been?
Oh, man, it's so hard. No, I asked that question, and I really don't have a good answer, but I would say I think Jackson Hole is about as special as you can get. And that was where that was where I moved. When I moved to Jackson Hole like September 15th. And so when I pulled into the valley, leaves were changing, and I drove around that first night and heard elk bugling. And I mean, you just can't get that out of your head. I love Crested Butte as well. And then here in Boulder, Green Mountain is 3 blocks from my house, and that's kind of my normal kind of training run is going up. And so I've gotten to where I love Green Mountain in Boulder. And so, but I can't pick one.
Yeah. Well, Caribou's another beautiful place up above you in Boulder.
Yep.
And then also, Rocky Mountain National Park in the fall
that's unreal.
Is unreal. That's another one that shoots high up there. I used to have to go there when I lived in Boulder, but I went up to Caribou a bit. I liked it up there. Netherlands up there, it was gorgeous. But no, it's hard to beat Jackson, man.
It
really
is
hard to beat Teton National Park, Yellowstone. They're just so raw and rugged, and people cannot impinge on those parks.
Mm-hmm.
The roadways can impinge, and I know some of the trails have got wear and tear, but there are places where you can get lost and, halfway damn near close to dead.
Oh, it's the real deal. Yeah, it's not a little hike out in, some state park. I mean, it is the real deal.
No.
Those mountains are the real deal, and that wildlife is real. I had some crazy experiences up in there. That was a very quick introduction into how serious it is out there.
Yeah, those grizzly bears can get gnawing at your toes too. So there's definitely it is, you know, you said it there. It's a real deal out there. And I mean, if you look at the magnitude of Yellowstone, not to mention it's probably what the biggest caldera there is on the planet, isn't it?
I think
I
so.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at that place. I mean, I think then that's a lot of the reason why it's so magical. There is all the energy that's running through that park in that area.
That's a good thought. I've
you
never,
know, the
never thought
thermal
about it that way.
activity, and it's so close to the core. And I mean, the not the core, but like the thinnest layer of the planet there. You know, it's just a lot of activity going on. Yeah, I think something's in the air in that air in Jackson Hole. I had the hardest time leaving that place.
I bet you did. I mean, I'm going up there in 2 weeks. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I hadn't been in a while, so it's gonna be fun. All right, final question. Oh, go ahead.
No, wait. Then the other thing I want to tell you is that and I don't know if a lot of other Jacksonites would believe or would agree with what I'm saying. It's like the skies open. June, you got the rain, and then the skies open up. And July and August are the most beautiful months ever on the planet. Is in Jackson Hole, and then in those 2 months, you get amnesia about how bad the other months were in the winter.
I agree with you.
And you go in for another cycle of winter. We're like, oh God, it's cold and it's all dark, and it's like, 8 months of winter, and then those 2 months of beauty, you get amnesia.
I completely agree. I 100% agree with that, because those 2 months are, you know, it's light from, you know, 4:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and you can just go out and, I mean, you can do everything. You work all day and then still get in hours of biking or hiking or running or whatever, fishing. I mean, it's just, God, that place is awesome. Maybe one day when I make my fortune, I can buy a house there and retire there.
There you go. There you go.
So how can people connect with you? Obviously, they can Google you, but all right, you got website, social media, all that kind of stuff?
admaddox.com.
Yep.
And I'm definitely on Facebook, 80 Maddox Studios on Facebook. Actually, if you go to my website, the front page, it'll have all my social media there to click on and follow me. And I've got new originals coming out that will be under my original section on my website. And then I've always got prints going on canvas and paper. I've got rugs that are area rugs that are available, and I've got beer mugs coming soon, and plates and coasters and linens. And then Montana Fly Company carries a lot of my stuff on iPhones and, thermoses and different things like that. Thincognito.com has got my clothing line for fleece pullovers and tights and beanies and
it's all really cool stuff. I'll have links to everything, so people just go to the web page and click through. But yeah, you've got some really, really cool stuff on your web page.
But Ed, you got to stay in touch with me. You're so cool, man.
Well, thank you for doing this.
You're
This
so
was really
fun
fun
to talk to. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to put a face to the name.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and thanks for listening to that particular episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Before you go, I've got 3 quick things. Number 1, if you like the podcast, please do me a huge favor. Either pass it along to a friend who may be interested, share it on your social media, or go to iTunes and give it a 5-star review. All those things would mean a lot to me, and they would really help to spread the word about the podcast. Number 2, if you've listened to many of these episodes, you know that I love reading and I love talking about books. Every other month, I send out a quick email with a few books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The subjects are varied, but they're pretty much all nonfiction with an emphasis on history, biographies, adventure narratives, and topics related to the American West. There are no sales pitches for ranches, no spam, no other kind of nonsense, just books. So if you'd like to sign up for the list, head to Mountain and Prairie/reading, or just go to Mountain and Prairie and there's a massive tab at the top that says book recommendations. Click on it. There are a ton of good books that I've read. Some of the old email lists are on there. You can go crazy. There are a lot of books. And finally, if you know anyone I should interview for the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. All my contact info is at mountainandprairie.com, and I'm on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to have some recommendations and suggestions of interesting people I should meet. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.